ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another DSLR video shooter live stream. It's Wednesday night, which means it's time for another stream. Wow, I just changed my exposure significantly. That's better. Okay, so let's kick things off by turning down that intro music. I'm then going to calm down my levels because things look a little intense, don't you think? Whew. All right, let's get rid of these headphones and get this party started. How's everybody doing? We got several people already in the chat. Marcus, Daniel, Joshua, Sigurd, Vicken, N1MP, Jonathan, Unbox Me, Luke, and others. Welcome, everybody. How's it going, Carlos? Good to see you back. Today, we're going to be talking about the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera. I have it right here. It came in Monday, and yesterday, I took this out to a good buddy's place and we tested it like crazy. We actually tested 6 different cameras. Those who saw the community tab post or over on social media saw information on that. But essentially, we compared this camera with the EOS R, the GH5, GH5S, the Fuji X-T3, and what else am I missing? There's something else I'm missing in that group. Is that all 6? I think that's all 6. Yeah, so we tested all of those, and I'm going to be doing a video comparing all of them together, and we're going to be seeing kind of, oh, and the A7 III, of course. Sorry, that's kind of a big deal. So we're going to be comparing all those cameras together. It's amazing to me how every single camera has strengths, weaknesses, and there's like zero overlap, okay? There's definitely some themes, like 10-bit 422 is becoming kind of a thing on these small bodies now, but it's pretty impressive how there's no, one camera that has everything, and that's just kind of how life is right now, it seems. So today I want to talk about the Blackmagic. Definitely let me know if you have any questions in particular in the comments below. I pulled in the footage today and started working with it a little bit. The first thing I realized with this camera is that I am going to have to sit down and really learn Resolve, because that's where I think this camera really gets unlocked. In and of itself, it's great, but to really maximize that RAW, you're going to have to know your stuff and get used to that software. So it does come with DaVinci Resolve Studio, which includes Resolve 15, amongst tons of other tools, and I'm running it on an iMac 5K. Works beautifully. Was able to pretty much full playback on this guy, lossless, without any problems there. So what we mainly shot was dynamic range tests, and we wanted to see how all these cameras compare when you expose them correctly, and then overexpose by 1, 2, and 3 stops, and underexpose by 1, 2, and 3 stops. So far from the footage, this guy is looking super strong. Obviously, that lossless is going to help a lot, lossless RAW. For media, you guys probably saw in the image, I was using, hopefully this isn't in use, I'm just going to unplug it here. I was using this guy right here, the Angelbird PKT drive. It's a small USB-C drive, and this thing handled lossless RAW, no problems at all. So we used that. We also used, believe it or not, I didn't think this was going to work, but the Angelbird, if I can hold it correctly, this little Angelbird V90 card killed it, man. I was not expecting this to work for RAW lossless, but it totally did. So Cinema 4K RAW lossless, this little card handled it. It's only a 64 gig card, so that gave me around 4 minutes of lossless, but wasn't expecting that, so that's cool. So those are the 2 types of media I use when we did our tests on this guy. We also, for all the cameras that have crop sensors, used speed boosters as well as no speed booster. So right now, this is the setup that I'm super digging. It is the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K with the speed booster 0.64. So this is, I believe, the widest you can get of a speed booster that will work on this camera. And then the Sigma 18 to 35, which worked great. So, just a touch of vignetting on the wide end, but it doesn't look like anything you'd expect. It's just a slight darkening, nothing noticeable really at all. So, yeah, let's get into it, shall we? The first thing you'll notice if you pick one of these things up is it feels really, really cheap. I wish I could have, gone back in time with this camera and held it next to the pre-production model that they had at NAB, because first, this one feels significantly lighter. And the second is, I feel like they changed the materials, because this feels like someone took a Fisher Price and spray painted it black. So it feels really cheap. Little things that kind of worried me. One was when you put a battery in, I have the battery door open. It doesn't, first of all, there's a bunch of stringies in there. You really have to get after it to close it. It's kind of doesn't seem like it fits perfectly. After just a day of use, and we didn't use it, nonstop because we were testing other cameras, I noticed the little sticker down here at the bottom that shows, Blackmagic, FCC approval or whatever. That's starting to peel off, so that kind of sucks. And then there's not a lot of aluminum. We've got an aluminum plate right here for the quarter 20, as well as a tiny one up here at the top, and then it's all plastic. So it's not going to feel anything like a GH5 or a camera that has, like a nice heavy magnesium finish. This is pretty cheap. Another thing I noticed, and it was making me wonder if they really rushed to get this thing out, was the plastic film. That satisfying, ooh, you got something brand new, a new laptop, a new TV, a new camera, and you peel away that little film. It was filthy underneath the screen, or underneath the film. So it's almost like they got these puppies off of the factory line, and instead of cleaning everything up and putting the film on, they just slapped it on. So they were like little fuzzies, little dots, little specks, and like hair and stuff. So normally I would think, oh, someone sent me a return or a refurbish, but it's a brand new camera, so I'm not sure what's up with that. So anyway, that's the first thing. Kind of a cheap feel. When you're actually using it, it doesn't seem too bad. It just feels a little too light. I know that's a good thing for a lot of scenarios, but when you have a lens like this, or the lens we used for all of our testing yesterday, which was the Canon cinema lens, and it was a 35-1.5, and it felt like you could hold the lens, and the body was just kind of duct taped to the back. The grip is almost perfect. I noticed that I constantly reach for the wheel as if it was on the top, but it's actually on the front right there to change your aperture. So often you have to change your grip to access that. So that's pretty annoying. But the software and the interface has been amazing so far. So I'll just go ahead and fire it up here. Hopefully there's some battery life left, because this thing does chew through batteries. Even the newer or better LPE6N batteries, it chews up those pretty good. But this right here is, let me get the lighting out of the way. There we go. The screen is great. Really, really nice. If you're going to be just sitting behind the camera, you're going to thoroughly enjoy this camera. Things like navigating the menus makes a lot of sense. It just takes some time because there's so much packed in here. So, pretty nice. Other things, the function menu button, I just felt like I needed more buttons. I love this row of function buttons up here at the top. I wish there was another dial or two, and that I had more buttons to program, because there's just so much in this camera. A lot of the time I just felt myself going into the menu system, hunting for things. So it'd be awesome to get something like that. So anyway, this has been my favorite setup with the 1.4 aperture on this lens at 18 millimeters. When you have that speed booster, the 0.65, it feels very close to full frame. And you guys will see all the side-by-sides comparing the A7 III full frame with the Canon crop 4K, with the GH stuff, and the GH5. I'm curious to see what the crop on this is like next to the GH5S, since that camera has a multi-aspect ratio. So, the other thing I noticed was the massive crop when shooting 1080 on this camera. So if you're going to be shooting 1080, you're going to be pretty upset with this guy. But I mean, I don't think many of us are buying this for 1080p, so there's that. When it comes to color, I think that's going to be the weakest part of this camera. I did some work in Resolve today, and I know I'm not a Resolve guy, so I could totally be doing it wrong, but just trying to find a LUT to convert the log of this camera to some kind of 709, everything looks trash. Everything looks really, really bad. And I was using all, Blackmagic LUTs. So if you guys know of a place where all the Blackmagic LUTs are, let me know. And specifically for this camera, because I know there's like several different versions of Blackmagic LUTs. So I need to kind of figure that stuff out. Yeah, sorry guys, when I was talking about the crop, that's in RAW. So RAW 1080 is going to be pretty crazy. The crop is insane. Yeah, so color, it's going to be interesting. If you're shooting with like ProRes and trying to work with it in another NLE, it's just going to take a lot more work to get right. Currently, my favorite setup for grading and color is Panasonic, because there's no silly settings. You just shoot Vlog, you use the official Panasonic LUT, and you're pretty darn close to perfect. Right, carbon fiber reinforced, yes. But it does feel very rigid. I don't feel like it's gonna creak or like torque or anything like that. But it just feels, especially this top layer. I mean, that's not a good sound. Also the fans, they eject the heat at the bottom, which I think they did to make sure that there's not going to be any issues with the microphones, and maybe that's a better way to help the sensor with heat. But that means that if you've got a big plate on this puppy, you're going to be blowing heat right where your hand goes when you're holding it. So I notice while doing this kind of thing, where you're holding the camera kind of like this, gets a little toasty, especially when shooting lossless. Right, so I'm going to look at the comments here and see what we have. Any questions so far? Oh yeah, and again, for the price, as Flanken said, it's amazing. $1,300 rather, and you get $200 worth of software. That's pretty sick. So in that regard, no issues at all. But I'm definitely putting that out there if you are going to Iceland or some other country, New Zealand, where you need something that's going to hold up. I would not take this camera. Rain and this thing are not going to play well together. Is it worth buying? I think so far. Now I need to sort out kind of a color workflow, because a lot of these cameras, I'm just finding more and more sticking with what the manufacturer recommends for a LUT workflow, instead of just throwing all kinds of crazy LUTs at it, is smart. And it works well. But for this one, I need to figure that out, because I think it's a little crazy. And that's what's tricky, is a lot of the cameras, it's pretty simple. We're only working with, it's a baked-in, non-raw situation. So at best, we get log, which, there's only so much you can do with that workflow. With this camera, with raw, it's not like, oh, do I just tweak the blacks and midtones and highlights this way? No, you've got almost unlimited, number of, different variables to be juggling, which is gonna take some time. But I am really, really excited about this camera. So far, out of all the cameras, this one is the most exciting to play with. Also, the Fuji. I know we're talking about the Blackmagic, but that Fuji X-T3 is looking really sweet. So I think those two cameras are the most surprising and interesting to me. I mean, I wasn't expecting this to be a bomb, completely bomb on me, but I'm enjoying this a lot more than I was expecting. So, do we have any questions? When it comes to how light this thing is, I mean, you could put one of those Panasonic pancakes on here and it would feel pretty sweet. So that's nice. It's just if you're going to be using any lens with heft, that's going to be a lot. Like holding this up is trying to like hold. It feels like I'm trying to hold, the back of this lens with two fingers. It's just, you really got to keep that balance. Anamorphic mode, have not played with it or have not done any anamorphic, but we'll get to that for sure. meltdown in Iceland. Yeah, that would be pretty rough. Is the screen bright enough? Yes, I think so. It's maybe not super bright. Did my battery die? Let's find out. I was redlining there. All right, we got 2%. Let's find out. All day I kind of left it at stock, which I've got a really bright light here. And as you can see, it's, except for the glare, which is very reflective, it's pretty nice, very bright. Also, the angle of it, there's kind of a lip that goes around it, so I think that might help. And then I know I can go in here. Let's go ahead and change our brightness. The touchscreen, the way the touchscreen works is perfect. It feels like you're on an iOS device. There's no lag or any issues like that. So let's go over here. So brightness is at 50%. I'm just going to go read. Oh, no. Apparently that did in my battery. So we'll talk about that more, but I think it's good enough. It's at least as good as everything else we've been seeing from other manufacturers. What kind of SSD do you need? So, 4K 60 RAW. Yeah. So that is going to require a lot. If you're trying to do 4K 60 lossless, you're going to have to spend some big coin. For 24 frames per second, I haven't fully tested every mode, but I'm pretty sure that PKT is going to be a very good option. And the nice thing about this, you just plug it right in and you can start editing if you'd like. I know Angelbird, this company, is coming out with a ton of media for this camera in particular. So they're going to have CFast cards. And then, but for 4K 60, I'm going to need to get back to you on that. People are talking about crop factors and such. Overheating, no issues yet. So yeah, I haven't had any problems. That would be interesting to stress test. It does get warm though, those vents, and like they're so huge. I think that's why it's doing well. Is it's got huge intakes at the top, and then this whole heat sink and fan system down here is blowing out air. No issues on fan noise, so don't have to worry about that at all, which is great. And I also noticed there's been a couple updates on Blackmagic's site, so we'll have to check that out. Is there something like S-Log? There's Blackmagic's film kind of mode. Do I have another battery here? I feel like I've had batteries floating all over this desk, but I do not have them here, of course. But yeah, there's several LUTs built in. You can add your own LUTs, and then there's kind of their, what do they call it, video, Blackmagic video, and then their film kind of setup for log. Let's see. Looking up here. People are talking about crops. Are you having any issues with certain LP6 batteries? So far, none. But I haven't tried, my nasty, cheapo batteries yet. I have a feeling a lot of people are going to be using, third-party batteries. And it's not much better than the old Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera. Yes, it's a bigger battery, but we're also doing raw 4K 60, so I don't think you're going to see a little better performance, but it's still pretty rough. It goes pretty quick. Can you balance it on a gimbal? With these newer gimbals that can handle lots of weight, yes. It might be kind of interesting because of its width, but it's super lightweight. So if I'm rocking a gimbal, I'm not doing this, which would be an incredibly front heavy, unless I had a really long plate and I kind of set up the gimbal to be kind of like, in the middle of that whole situation, or balance it that way. I would probably be using smaller Panasonic lenses for that, or a speed booster and kind of smaller primes is what I would go for if it was me. Blackmagic film is the way to go for flat profile. Right on. Thanks, Trevor. Can Final Cut X read RAW files? Haven't tried that yet, but I don't think so, because at this point it's still DNG. So you'd have to use a DNG workflow, which I don't think is possible still in Final Cut. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys. So you'll have to open those up in some other software, tweak the raw files, and then go from there. Will it work with non-Canon batteries? Yeah, you can use either a dummy battery. Actually, I was going to check that and I never did. So it looks like there is no way, there's no hole in this door here to use your own battery. So it looks like you're stuck with, well, that's stupid because there's two other options. We have our 12 volt in, so you might get an adapter cable because it comes with a little brick that you can plug into the wall. And then there's USB. I can't recall if it can be, I think it can be powered via, no, that can't be right? Can it be powered over USB? I should probably know that, but you got the 12 volt input. It's a kind of a custom connector. But yeah, there's no way to add a cable to this unless you have the door, you know, sticking out. It looks like it can be removed, so you could go with something like that. Let's see, what else we got here? What computer specs for editing 4K 10-bit 422 ProRes RAW? I'm not the one to talk about that with, because I've rarely ever used, I've barely touched Resolve, so I really couldn't help you out with that. What about autofocus? I haven't tried that yet because we used manual cinema lenses yesterday, and then today and last night I was playing with the Sigma 18-35, which on this Metabones adapter was not playing ball, so just didn't do anything for autofocus. So I don't know if that's the lens's fault, the adapter's fault, or the camera's fault. Yeah, Simon, that's a rough name. Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K. So I'm trying to figure out what to call it. Probably just the Pocket 4K. Blackmagic Pocket 4K. Something like that. Thoughts on how Blackmagic RAW might change things? Yeah, I'm excited for that because I believe that's eventually going to hit all cameras, right? It's in beta right now with the Ursa Mini Pro. Is that right? 4.6K Pro or whatever. I'm excited for that because there will be higher compression rates available, I believe. Again, I haven't read too much about it, but I believe you'll be able to still get RAW at smaller data rates, and there'll be actual video files, so it's not just like a pile of DNG files, which means if Apple and Adobe want to, they can support it, and it's open source. Yeah, the battery door does come off, but there's no, like, you know, way to get a cable through there. There's no little hidden pocket to thread a cable out. Yeah, so I think that'll help a lot. I think that'll be really cool to try out. Samsung T5 of questions from Carlos. It's USB-C. I know people use those. I don't have any. And I know people that drive has not worked for 4K 60. I need to try this. If I can get a battery, I can test that right now, I think. Yeah, I think there was a battery in this bag right next to me. Let's find out if this little drive can handle 4K 60 RAW lossless. So let me grab a battery. At least I hope there's a battery over here. There may not be. I'm gonna run in the other room because I'm really curious if it's even possible with this. 1 second. Oh. Let's hope that one of these batteries has juice in it. So I'll open this up. While I do that, heads up, after this stream, I'm headed over to my good friend Jem Schofield's stream over at the C47. So we're going to do a new episode of Camera and Flask, and we're talking about RGB lighting, so that should be fun. All right, powering it up. Let's see what we got. 2% battery. Oh boy. All right. So we're going to go USB, plugging it in now. I'm just going to let it hang because YOLO, battery's dead. Okay, that's not going to work. Let's try another battery. Power it up again. This might be a huge disappointment. 93 battery. Okay, we're good now. All right, so I'm going into the camera. We're doing RAW. We're going to do lossless, 4K DCI. Frame rate, let's go up all the way to 60, even, 60 frames per second. And hit record. Let's see if we can get to a minute. So far it's good. I'll hold it like this, sort of. So you can see, we should get an explanation point. There it is. So that did not work. We had a drop frame. So it looks like this guy is not going to cut it. I would format it, but I'm not ready to do that on this drive. So yeah, not going to work for 4K 60 DCI. Let's go back in, record. We'll change the resolution to Ultra HD. So now we're not doing Cinema 4K. Rolling again on that. Also tally light, adjustable, fun. And I will say this wheel here for aperture, I really like how responsive it is. You don't have to you can really work through. Oh, we got that failed. Okay, so that's not going to work. So it looks like you're stuck with 24, maybe 30 frames per second with this guy here. Moral of the story, if you want, let me turn the camera off before I pull out this cable. If you want to do 4K 60 RAW, lossless, you're going to have to spend some coin. Some serious coin to get that to work. Try 3:1. I'm almost positive that will work. Let's go ahead and do it now that I've turned it off to see if there's a way to get 4K at all. 60 RAW. Boot up times are great for the record. So let's go 3:1. DCI. 60. Roll on that. Whoops. I stopped it. There we go. Rolling. I don't know why my hat always gets crooked over time. Something wrong with my face. So far, so good. We'll just let that go for a little while. Is the image quality better than the FS5 II? That's a good question. I haven't done ProRes RAW on that camera yet, so that could be interesting. Do ProRes RAW versus this guy. D-tap, okay, cool. So you can get that in an adapter cable. Do you have a video on how you color grade videos? I have an old one. That would be a good place to start, and I'm hoping to update that before too long. Before I forget, while this is running, we're doing good so far. I'm going to grab a link to the next stream, which is, again, with Jem Schofield over at his channel. Boom. There it is. Oh, the Russians are coming. Okay. All right, we're at over a minute, and we're doing okay at 3:1. So that's 4K 60 cinema DNG 4K, essentially. Or, yeah, DCI, I should say. 3:1. So you're good to go there, it looks like. And again, it's only a 1 minute recording. So I'll go ahead and power this down, and I'll unplug it once it turns off. There we go. Let's see here. Close that down. Probably use compress raw for B-roll. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I doubt it would be too... And it would be interesting to compare the different RAWs. So how much better is lossless compared to 3:1? And that's where Blackmagic RAW is going to be really interesting, because supposedly those higher compression options are still really solid. Is it worth the hype? I think so. I mean, for the money, again, $1,300. You're $200 cheaper than that Fuji camera, but you're doing RAW. Yes, the sensor size is small. You'll probably need a speed booster, but since there's like very little autofocus in this camera, it's just kind of got that one touch autofocus mode. You might as well get one of those cheapo speed boosters and you're off to the races. So if I was starting today and my budget was $1,500, it would be very tempting to get this camera, a cheap $100 or sub $100 speed booster, like a Canon FD to Micro Four Thirds, and then some cheap Micro or FD lenses, and go to town. More info on slow-mo issues with stepped lines. Okay, so I'll definitely test that. Better quality files you can work with more. Is there a drop frame indicator? Yes. The little red record button, when you hit record, it shows red. It'll blink with a explanation point if there's drop frames. Do you reckon you could put small HD focus on there with a Canon battery? That might work. Yeah, we should try that. 5:1 should be good for general use. Cool. Is there currently no media for USB-C fast enough to write? I have a drive that's broken that might be fast enough. It's a, again, Angelbird XT PKT. It's a lot of letters. But that drive ought to do the trick. I don't know what's going on with the Russian talk. Same sensors as GH5S. That's what I've heard. Different dual native ISOs, though. How's the ISO performance? I haven't really worked with it beyond the dynamic range test we did in RAW, so I will be sitting down and going through the whole range to see what's up there. Yes, you're totally right. If you're talking about a hybrid shooter, the XT3 is gold, because it's, it's gonna give you some wicked stills, whereas this is not going to do that for you. Okay. Can you charge but not power? I'm not quite sure. Do you have the Lens Turbo 2 speed booster? Works very... oh, the Viltrox? I have not tried that yet, but I know people love it. Yeah, so we're going to have to wait. Any stabilization? Nope. But I will say the width of this camera is pretty handy for a couple reasons. One, when you do this, you're essentially, it's like driving a car with a steering wheel, the size of this lens cap on most cameras. It's going to be very difficult to deal with handling, but if you have a normal size steering wheel, it's a lot easier. So same with this camera. When you're doing this, the width here is significant. Another bonus to that is we had this thing on a massive rig that my buddy set up on top of a huge tripod head, and I had no problems getting the battery, on and off, because it's way over here. So that's really handy. You can swap batteries and access that very easily. But this might be kind of interesting on a gimbal, so we'll have to wait and see. What's the repair situation? When did I pre-order? I pre-ordered, I thought about it for a second and then was like, you know what, this camera, I really need to cover it. So I pre-ordered it pretty much as fast as I saw it was available on B&H. So yeah, I'm really curious to see what stock is going to look like on this camera. How's the image compared to the GH5? We're going to have to wait and see. I'm importing the footage from yesterday right now, and there's a lot of it. So we'll be finding out pretty quickly. But from my initial look, I'm really, really happy with the image on this. Except for color, that's the only thing. Skin is kind of brownish yellow. And there's multiple shades of different colors just on your face, which is too bad. Rolling shutter, we did sticks, so I haven't noticed too many issues yet. No problem with the speed booster, none. I will say though that it's loose a little bit. If you hear that, which is kind of weird because speed boosters from Metabones have always worked beautifully. So I'm gonna go ahead and say that's the fault of the camera because I don't have any issues on Panasonic bodies. Thank you, tech savvy buyer. Appreciate you. This by itself or something else with an external recorder. Pretty much this by itself if you want RAW. Yeah, pretty much. You don't need anything else. You can hook up a cheap SSD. I want to try, I don't know if it's possible, but I would imagine it's possible, getting a USB-C SD reader. So it's just got the pins, the SATA pins on one end and USB-C on the other, and just plug in cheaper drives and see what happens. That could be interesting. Yeah, and in our test that we did yesterday, the Fuji X-T3, we also had a speed booster on that. So that'll be cool to see, where that lands. Is it true the battery charger is not included in the box? You're right, no battery charger. In fact, I don't think mine came with a battery, which I thought it was supposed to. So, interesting. Does Viltrox make a .64 speed booster? I do not think they do. I'm pretty sure right now the only company that makes one is Metabones. So unfortunately, there's no budget option available that I know of. What's up, Fur? How we doing? They may have erred in the other direction, mount and tightness. The original Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera was extremely tight. Some of my lenses are very hard to mount. Interesting. You could totally be right. You're probably right, Fur. They just backed off a little bit on that. And it's weird because, like, looking at the mount, it just looks so strange because it just looks weird. Because I've only ever dealt with Panasonic and Olympus Micro Four Thirds cameras. Cage. Yes, there will be a cage, or there is one available for pre-order right now from Small Rig. So that's cool. Only one question. Would you use it on a regular basis? If I got some kind of power solution, I could totally see myself using this. And so I can't remember who. Maybe you guys can help me figure this out. But somebody on YouTube said this. They made this. This made them think more of like the Blackmagic Cinema Camera, not the Pocket. And I thought that was interesting. Like, this does really feel and kind of look like an updated Pocket or an updated cinema camera, Blackmagic Cinema Camera, not the Pocket. So I'm also really curious to see what Blackmagic does with the micro cinema camera. Are we going to see a version of this with chopping off of either side? And I think it could be cool to see that camera with some interesting accessories, because I don't know about you guys, but I see people all over the place with those little cameras, and they've like modded them for cinema use. They don't use them like action cams. They use them like this camera. So could be cool to see what they do with that. What's up, Post Blog Color? Can't wait to get my hands on one running through its paces. Nice. Dutch video shooter. Nice. Yeah, dude. I might have to rely on you for some Resolve help. Love the MKB t-shirt. Yep. Boom. This is the Vintage Mac edition. Love MKB HD. Good stuff. Shape and Lampart have a cage for it. Awesome. Nice. I'll have to check that out. Ooh, great question. Color science on this versus the original Pocket Cinema Camera. Unless you're talking about the Blackmagic Cinema Camera. Man, it's hard to keep track of them all. It's almost as bad, if not worse, than the Sony stuff. You don't like the skin tones? I love them, Patrick says. It could be the lighting too. I just need to use it in my setup here because I know, my lights and how I light like the back of my hand. Can you go deeper on skin color? So we shot RAW and we shot ProRes, and it's just lacking. Something's going on. You know how like Canon, there's just nice reds. You won't find many harsh yellows or greens in skin. It's just good reds all around, or just neutral. And then you've got Panasonic, which has a little bit of yellow. Like, you'll notice right now we're shooting with the G7. If you look at my skin, it'll look pretty pinky red, but right around this area, mustache / like, handlebar area, it's kind of yellow. You see that? And everyone's a little different, but Canon, this is reduced. Panasonic, it's there a little bit. And there's a way you can kind of deal with that. On this camera, from my initial look at the footage, it looks like there's just lots of different stuff going on in the skin. So it might be harder to kind of clean that up. But I need to figure out how to do RAW right with this camera and Resolve before I can really judge that too much. But it looks like it's going to need some love to get it right. Just got a GH5. Should I be worried? No, I still think the GH5 is a gold setup. Yeah, definitely. And it's not like this camera is going to hunt down anyone who's not RAW and eat their cameras. So you're good. I can't wait. This makes me think of like, or I should say, I can't wait for other manufacturers to get RAW going. Like I would love to someday see a GH5 RAW. Yeah, really looking forward to that. Lighting setup looks nice, Caleb. Thank you very much. Appreciate. That's very, very kind of you. Yeah, so this is a new setup in the office. It's a disaster behind me. I've got an RGB light back there because after this show, I'm headed over to Jem Schofield's show, and we're going to be talking about all things RGB lighting, where we're at now, what's coming up in the future, and different options. It's funny because he's got, Jem has a ton of high-end and kind of middle-tier RGB lights, and I just recently got in a ton of really affordable RGB stuff and kind of taking up the rear on the low end there. So again, I'm going to plug that stream. I just dropped it down in the chat box. Definitely check that out. And it's going to be fun. Where I'm going to head over there, actually not before too long, and grab a beverage and start chatting with my bestie. So it's going to be fun. Is this APS-C or Micro Four Thirds? It's Micro Four Thirds if you're talking about the Pocket Cinema Camera. Still cinematic and raw? It depends on who you talk to. I think it looked really, really good. I just need to figure out how to everything that happens in between my final image and dealing with the raw stuff. Battery life. It's not the worst thing in the world. It isn't great though. So we were changing batteries pretty often during the testing. I cannot wait for every manufacturer to catch up with like Sony, like the A7 III. Oh my goodness. Just, it's phenomenal. You put 2 of those in a battery grip and you don't have to look at the battery levels at all. It's great. Do Panasonic lenses fit the mount? It should, and I'm looking forward to trying those because I think that'll be pretty great. Have you updated the latest Resolve beta to get the correct LUT? Okay, so I'll have to try that let's chat after this, because that's what I'm trying to figure out is like, where do you get the official LUTs? Only through Resolve? So, yeah. All right, guys, I'm going to finish up here, head over to Jem's channel, and I'm going to have a beverage with him and talk about filmmaking and lighting. Once again, there's the link. I'll drop it in the description if you're watching this after the fact, and looking forward to seeing you guys over there. It's going to be interesting. Hit me up with any questions you have, and I'll try to do my best to cover everything with this camera. It's going to be a long road to figuring out getting the best image possible off of this puppy. So thank you guys so much for joining me. See you in a little bit over at Jem's, and also in our next video here in the channel.